Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart. My name is Barb Langle, and I participate in the life of the church by serving on the Board of Trustees, among other things. We are a religious community of people with diverse beliefs and shared values. Our diverse beliefs are expressed in our 6 sources, and our shared values are expressed in our 7 principles. Both can be found online at uua.org. Together, we strive to grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. There are a few announcements today. I have a couple myself. One is the last time the church had a recipe cookbook was for our 125th anniversary. So Caitlin DuBois, who I don't think is here today, her and I are going to put together one for the 150th anniversary. We'd like to start collecting recipes now through September 15th, so we could get them together and get the book going. We want to have it ready by our Thanksgiving dinner. And if anybody would like to help us on this fun adventure, I mean, it's going to be fun. Please contact me or Caitlin and send all the recipes to me. Thank you. Another announcement is we are collecting school supplies for the River Forest School community, and there's a table by the nursery, and there's paper there's lists there of what we will be collecting. If anybody would like to get that list and bring things in, we'd really appreciate it. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Farrell. I'm the Religious Education Chair. So a lot of you know already, but Religious Education and Faith in Action are partnering to offer our whole lives sexuality education curriculum to teens in the community, hopefully early next year. So we did collect donations from you all earlier this year, and we really appreciate those donations, and a lot of those are going to be used for marketing, and then any donations this year will go towards the program itself. So we were going to buy a banner and put it out in front of the church, but the city of Hobart has pretty strict rules on how long you can have a banner up, so we didn't want to spend that much money on a banner. It was only going to be up for 30 days, and then we'd have to take it down. So we decided to do yard signs. So we had these yard signs made so that any of you guys that want to put a yard sign up in your yard or a neighbor's yard, or someone you know that is in favor of it that has a house on a busy street, we thought this way we could get the word out, all over Northwest Indiana, and then there'd be no regulations on how long we can have the sign out. So if anybody would like a yard sign, let me know. We also have flyers. These take the place of the old flyer, which accidentally had a QR code that had a charge to it. So now this QR code is free. So if you did put up any of the old flyers, if you could take it down and put up the new flyer. So let me know if you have any questions, and thanks.
Pastor John?
So over the course of this past year, a number of folks came up to me throughout the year saying, you know what, there's all this interesting stuff that comes up in the sermons, and I would love to get a chance to talk about it with folks. And so one of the things that we're starting today is after the worship service, 15 minutes after we wrap up, I welcome folks to gather in here, not with anything that's going to stain the carpet. So please, if you are drinking cranberry juice, leave it in the other room. But anybody who would like to join in some conversation about what the sermon or the worship series or the worship service as a whole has meant for your spiritual life or your spiritual journey, I would welcome you to be a part of that conversation.
We are currently streaming our services online. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will take a break at that time. Other than that, the service will be recorded and will be available for future use viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Now please let your Facebook and Twitter fans know that you are attending worship with hashtag First Unitarian Hobart. And silence your devices and take a deep breath and another, and join us in the spirit of reverence.
Join me with lighting the chalice. We gather this hour as people of faith, joy and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light the beacon of hope, the sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and the celebration in a life we share together.
The opening words are from the book of Job, and as of this moment in Job's life, things haven't been going well. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow, or have you seen the treasuries of the hail? From whose womb did the ice come forth, and who has given birth to the hoarfrost of heavens? The waters become hard like stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Please rise as you're willing and able for the opening hymn, number 1009 in the teal hymnal.
You'll notice that this song is in three parts, so I'd like to actually start it a little differently than we normally do this one. I just like to start with the drone, and then I will come in with the melody, and you can feel free to just do the drone or the melody or the descant if you want. We'll just start with the drone. It goes like this. Breathe in, breathe out.
So I invite everybody to be seated. We're going to do an extra thing in between the opening song and the affirmation of faith. We have a custodian that we are hiring, so I'd like to invite B up to the front here. Thank you to everybody who responded to my call for suggestions, recommendations of folks to reach out to as a part of the hiring process. Jerry, our longtime custodian, is retiring. We are so grateful for his tenure here, and B is starting, and they're kind of phasing in, phasing out over the next couple of weeks. So I just wanted to do a little covenanting process with you all, as we did with Ashley. I would emphasize there are, in most jobs, there is an employer-employee relationship. This is similar to that in that, there's tax forms we need to fill out and processes and so on. But also in a congregation, there's a covenantal relationship, which doesn't supersede the employer relationship, but it's in the mix. It's a part of who we are together. And so I would invite B to engage us and also you all to engage in a covenanting together. And so I have some questions that I will prompt both to B and then also to you. And the response to those that I would encourage and welcome is I will. So B, will you offer us your honesty and integrity, including keeping confidentiality when needed?
I will.
And would you hold the mic up just so we can be sure to catch your voice?
Do you need to hear me
So
louder than this?
So
I will.
So since we broadcast our services online, if something isn't heard in the microphone, then the people out in there won't be able to hear us. So will you contribute to imagining how we can create an even better congregation for the future?
I will.
And will you handle differences and conflict directly, respectfully, and professionally with the goal of shared growth?
I will.
And will you encourage direct communication among members and friends of the congregation?
Please do. I will.
And will you take care of yourself and know that even in the midst of all the important work we do together, that your own thriving is a key piece of that?
Please do. I will.
And will you remember that the staff and the congregation work as a team and we are never on our own?
Please do. I will.
And will you respectfully challenge yourself and the rest of us toward growth?
I will.
And will you celebrate your own individual and our collective successes and offer acceptance and forgiveness when we fall short of our aspirations?
Absolutely, I will. We
Wonderful.
Are human.
And so will the congregation please rise and body your spirit to also take part in this covenanting process? Will you honor and appreciate B's unique offerings to this congregation? And will you celebrate her successes and offer acceptance and forgiveness when she falls short of your expectations? And will you handle any differences or conflict that may arise directly and respectfully with a goal of shared growth? And will you remember that the staff and the congregation work as a team and that none of us are on our own? We welcome B as our new custodian. May we all be bearers of the light of our beloved faith as we continue our journey together. And so I invite you to stay risen for our affirmation of faith.
Okay, our affirmation of faith, the words are printed in the order of service or the laminated handouts in the pews. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer. And this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We are striving to create a worship space which is both spiritual and safe. However, we recognize that not everyone can attend in person. We extend a special welcome to everyone who is joining us virtually today. Thank you to our tech team for making the live streaming and recording possible. They do great work. Now, for those present in the sanctuary, please take a moment to greet your neighbor by waving your hands and letting the warmth of your smile fill the spaces between us.
seated. So last week, I introduced our joys and sorrows with a guided meditation by Joanna Macy, which was fitting for this worship series that is in part about welcoming what is. And so I'll just, instead of going through the whole guided meditation with you all, just a quick reminder of some of the main points that were brought up in there as we center ourselves for our joys and sorrows. Notice the energy of life within and around you. Notice the strands of that life energy that connect us to all that is around us. How the flesh of your body has been intricately concocted out of the food you have eaten and the hands and materials that made it possible. How the strands of that life energy extend back through time, parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, extending back through countless generations, through numberless ancestors that we share with one another, all the way back to those with gills and wings, all of which evolved from star stuff. And the pain that is also included in that web. The friend with cancer, the oil spill coating the beach, the mother weeping for her lost children. Do not shut them out. They live in the web of this planet time. Open to these sorrows. Breathe them in so the channels may stay open for the flow of energy and life and change. If we block the pain, we block the joy as well. There is power in the flowing of this fluid net, love that has enriched us and love that we give. Feel the caring and love that flow through you. We are deeply a part of it all, shaped by it, and may we be open to it all, unafraid and relaxed and alert. May we open to all our siblings that are going through a difficult time, but not alone. We go now through a dark place, but we do not go alone. And we do not go without our timeless knowledge of the dark. We come from it. It is behind our eyes. And we will look into it together until the dark itself is clear and home. There is nowhere you can go where you're not held in the web that sustains us all. And so, still sensing these connections through space and time, I invite you to notice within you if there is a joy or sorrow that you would like to share, to give voice to in this space so that we can all hold it together. And if you have one, I invite you, when I come to you with the microphone, to just say your name so that we know who you are. has been spoken into this space and all that remains in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May we continue to weave this community into ever more beautiful patterns. By way of introducing our reading this morning, last week we started a new series that explores some absolutely core bedrock relational principles. And by bedrock, I mean when these are going well, everything can work great, bringing about a greater sense of, in Susan Campbell's words, serenity, presence, and compassion. When these are not going well, everything becomes more precarious, with fear, anxiety, frustration, exasperation. And we're getting into a key spiritual practice to all of this in this series, the spiritual practice of honesty. Meditation and prayer attend to our relationship to being with what is. And just like those, honesty is not a skill of the mind. It is difficult because of its simplicity. How do we learn, in Campbell's words, to live in the gap between our ideals and the reality? How do we embrace a spirituality of wholeness, in Kathleen O'Connor's words, in which we don't fall into patterns of stuffing down or hiding parts of ourselves from others, and that the parts of ourselves that we're afraid to reveal, our thoughts, our experiences, our actions, our past, our present, our imagined future, about what we feel at least just uncomfortable enough to not be forthcoming about, or maybe so uncomfortable that we feel ashamed. You may have noticed that the arc of the sermon last week was an interesting one. I started off talking about planetary destruction and how, in the words of theologian Matthew Fox, ours has become a culture overwhelmed with death. Some of it real and much of it brought on ourselves by ourselves. Death is around us and has overtaken us. And in the words of Joanna Macy, the future seems ever more fragile, with wars igniting around the globe, the forests falling, the hungry and homeless on our streets, the poisons in our food, water, air, and breast milk, and the extinction of whole species and cultures. It grows harder to take hope in our common journey. We are tempted to shut down, narrowing our sights to our own and our family's short-term survival. So we started on that note, and then we ended on the note of focusing on individual honesty. Now that might be a pretty big leap from these gigantic planetary human race scale problems to these micro moments with ourselves and one another. But so many of those gigantic planetary human race scale problems are rooted in our temptation to try to stay safe and in control. Our temptation to try to stay safe and in control. And the very first steps that are taken on that path toward focusing on safety and control at the expense of all else are dishonesty with one another and ourselves about how much safety and control we need in order to be okay. About how much power we could possibly exert over ourselves or others in order to make things a certain way. And one of the downsides of giving in to that temptation to stay safe and in control is that we reinforce our aloneness and our isolation. In Campbell's research, she estimates that fully 80% of human communication is unconsciously tailored to maintain safety and control. 4 out of the 5 things that come out of our mouths are attempts to avoid hurting people's feelings, avoid looking foolish, avoid conflict, disagreement, or feeling anger, ensuring that things turn out right, or avoiding feeling out of control. And so in the face of all of this, how should we respond? Do we have the tools that we need, the emotional tools, the spiritual tools? How can we consciously choose the actions that we take in the world in a way that, in Fox's words, arise from our freedom and not from our acting out in the face of what we don't like? Acknowledging the deep suffering of the world, resolving to assist a great turning beyond that suffering, engaging in the sort of spirit work that heals and gives us hope, thereby empowering us on the way to a healing life. Finding our prophetic voice, giving adequate attention to future generations not yet born, and contributing to the healing work that our times and pain require. How can we, in the words of Joanna Macy, take our yearnings and help us find in them the courage, commitment, and community that we need to change our lives and move into action for the healing of our world? Taking stock of the grandeur of the human heart, feeling a readiness to face the bad news, feeling and expressing both our grief and rage, but also courage and creativity. In the face of all the bad news, the challenge of creating a sustainable civilization can seem absurdly unrealistic, yet it is germinating now. That sustainable society on which the future depends, its seeds are sprouting in countless actions in defense of life. I imagine, Macy continues, that future generations will look back on this period and call it the time of the great turning. It is the epochal shift from a self-destructive industrial growth society to a life-sustaining society. And so last week, I talked about how a key piece of this is letting go of shoulds. What I think you should be doing or feeling or saying, or what I think I should be feeling or thinking or wanting. Because when we let go of the shoulds, it allows us to, in Campbell's words, discover our authentic voice, to uncork whatever parts of ourselves have been squelched. And what we most tend to have shoulds around is suffering, is pain, either our own or others. But as philosopher Theodore Adorno has written, the need to let suffering speak is the condition of all truth. In the history of the world, one of the great repositories of uncorked, unsquelched expression by a broader community is the Book of Lamentations, which was written over 2,500 years ago. It's what's called a city's lament. It's a collection of 5 poems written to grieve the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the deportation of its leading citizens by the rulers of the nearby Babylonian Empire. It's part of the canon of the Holy Scriptures of both Judaism and Christianity. Many Jews read it each year on the holiday of Tisha B'Av, which is coming up soon. And many Christians read parts of it each year during the season of Lent or on Good Friday. The book is filled with sadness and frustration and anger, and for most of the 2,500 years since its authorship, people's writings about the Book of Lamentations have delved into and explored and wrestled with that sadness and frustration and anger. But a couple hundred years ago, commentators started to focus on the third of the 5 poems, more than the other ones. They focused on the third because that's the one that, one, focuses on a man's voice instead of centering around a woman's voice, and 2, emphasizes hope, that tries to bring a positive spin to everything. For the past couple hundred years, the story being told about the Book of Lamentations is that all that talk about suffering was really just there to get us to give more perspective to hope, which is really what we should be focusing on. It wasn't until the 1990s that mostly female interpreters and commentators on the book started to shift that trend. As Bible scholar Todd Leinefelt has written, chapter 3 of Lamentations begins with the statement, "I am the man." And it is a phrase that could just as easily begin virtually every modern commentary on the Book of Lamentations. Until the last decade or so, one could search in vain for citations in the scholarly literature of commentaries on the book written by women. It is difficult to assess precisely how much the figure, or how much the gender of an interpreter affects the nature of the interpretation, yet it seems clear that the maleness of the figure in chapter 3 has exerted an influence on the evaluations of male interpreters. So this morning we'll be hearing some excerpts instead from the first 2 poems in the book of Lamentations, in which a presumably male narrator and a female representation of the city of Jerusalem each share their voices in lament at the Babylonian destruction of the city. The narrator starts off with a bit more of a tone of distance and objectivity, but Zion, another name for the city of Jerusalem, speaks up and shares her experience, and the narrator more and more gives up the role of the spectator and instead shares in her perspective. So I'd like to invite our readers up to share that with us.
The narrator's view of Zion's fall. How lonely sits the city once great with people. She has become like a widow, she who was once great among the nations. A princess among the provinces, she is now in forced labor. Bitterly she weeps in the night, and her tears are upon her cheeks. There is no one to comfort her among all her lovers. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. She has fallen terribly. There is no one to comfort her.
Eternal, look at my affliction, for the enemy has made himself great.
All her people are groaning, seeking bread. They give their precious things for food to stay alive.
Eternal, look and pay attention, for I have become worthless.
Daughter Zion's plea to be seen.
Is it nothing to you who pass by on the way? Pay attention and look. Is there any pain like my pain, which was severely dealt upon me? I weep. My eye runs down with tears, because my comforter is far from me, one who would turn my spirit. My children are desolate because the enemy prevailed.
Zion spread out her hands. There is no one to comfort her.
Listen, I beg you, all peoples, and see my pain. Hear how I am groaning. There is no one to comfort me.
In the days of God's anger, the elders of daughter Zion sit upon the ground in silence. They put dust upon their heads. They put on sackcloth. The virgins of Jerusalem hang their heads on the earth. Weep day and night. My eyes waste with tears. My bowels are in ferment. My bile is poured out on the ground because of the breaking of the daughter of my people. As the child and the infant are fainting in the streets of the city. To their mothers they say, "Where is the corn and the wine?" As they faint like the mortally wounded in the streets of the city, as their lives are poured out on the breasts of their mothers. What can I say for you? What can I compare to you, O daughters of Jerusalem? What can I liken to you that I may comfort you, O virgin daughter Zion? For great as the sea is your breaking, who can heal you? Cry out with your heart to Adonai, O wall of daughter Zion. Let tears run down like a torrent day and night. Do not let yourselves stop. Do not let your eyes be still. Look.
Should women eat their children, the children they have raised? Should priest and prophet be killed in the sanctuary of the Eternal? The young and the old lie down on their ground in the streets. My virgins and my young men fall by the sword. You killed them on the day of your anger. You slaughtered, you did not pity. You summoned, as on a feast day, terrors all around. and on the day of anger of the Eternal, no one escaped or survived. Those whom I carried and reared, my enemy destroyed.
And so, in response to this reading, in answer to these voices of pain and anger and frustration that give voice not just to the experience of those 2,500 years ago, but that have been turned to for comfort in the years since, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and sing together hymn 1002, Comfort Me. Please be seated. As part of the preparation process for becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister, one of the requirements is, or to be a fellowship, Unitarian Universalist minister, one of the requirements is to do a chaplaincy, usually at a hospital, sometimes some other place, for a number of months. And I did mine at the University of California at San Francisco Medical Center. And most of the time I was on the musculoskeletal floor, and so it was back surgeries, hip surgeries, knee surgeries, and it was really amazing. People would check in at 4 p.m. and they would be out the next morning by 10 with like a back surgery, which blew my mind, the things they can do with medicine these days. But there were also, we had to do overnights periodically, where we did the chaplain for the entire hospital. For the overnight, there was a little room we could sleep in. We would be on call in case anything came up. And there was this one time when I was on call, and I went into a waiting room to work with some folks who were dealing with some things. And while I was there, I noticed that there was Dad and his sons dealing with some hard news. And the father kept encouraging his boys not to cry, trying to get them to not emote in that way. Their father's unwillingness or desire to not be with their pain, to see them in the honesty of that, wouldn't make the situation necessarily any better for those boys. It was his strategy to try to stay safe and in control. And the impact of that can only squelch the reality of the situation. Each of us has been in the position of those boys trying to find a place to put the terrible grief at something that is going on in our lives. And I would assume that most, if not all of us, have also been in the space of the Father, feeling our own grief and not sure how to hold somebody else's, and trying to manage all the intensity of everything that's going on for us. Anywhere in our society, communities of faith are the place where people turn to for support in times of struggle. You can't get that at work. You can't really get that at the bar, or at the gym, or at the mall, or from the government. Religious institutions are the one place that has that specialty. Certainly not always, but when people are looking for support through those heart-rending experiences, they tend to turn to communities of faith. When people turn to us with hearts and souls in need of accompaniment, either individually as our community, how can we welcome that? How can we meet that need? In what ways do you feel like we can bring those parts of ourselves into this community and have them met? And in what ways in this space among these people do we hesitate? Or are we unsure? The Protestant Christian impulse is to ask, what if something along the way is something that the church has been doing that gets in the way of Christianity? And that core Protestant impulse is what powered the evolution of Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists, giving us the hubris to go so far as to ask, what if our strict primary focus on Jesus or on this particular way of being Christian might actually itself be getting in the way? And in doing so, our religious ancestors leaned so hard into their Protestantism that they protested their way out of just being another Christian denomination. The Unitarian Universalist emphasis on listening for the value in the unfamiliar, on truly being with others, even if they are very different from us, is often us at our best. Our willingness to let in the new, the different, that which might be uncomfortable or seem weird, is one of our superpowers. As long as we are a faith that steadfastly adheres to no creed, we are free to hear the new song that may be at first a little strange to our ear or uncomfortable, and to welcome it because a core part of who we are as a religious movement is a people who remain open to that. Which is not to say that we are perfect at it. By no means are we perfect at it. Just like any other human beings, we prefer safety and familiarity. We prefer it when we feel like we have some sense of control over how things go. But our capacity and our willingness to remind each other, to call each other back to that openness, is very much us being our best Unitarian Universalist selves. In 1961, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America consolidated into the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, or UUA for short. And in 1964, they published their first hymnal, Hymns for the Celebration of Life. It's a little bit of a misnomer because it's more than just hymns. There's 327 hymns and 231 readings, but it is accurate in that it focuses very much on celebration. From the first hymn to the last reading, it sticks with the theme of downplaying the unpleasant and insisting that we focus on the more enjoyable parts of life. This is certainly not unique to us as Unitarian Universalists. The father in the waiting room that I talked about earlier was not UU. Mainstream Western culture does not do a great job of supporting folks in navigating hard emotions, which leaves us predictably with our strategies of last resort, trying to stay safe and trying to be in control. In the 29 years after Hymns for the Celebration of Life was published, the UUA published our second hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, which includes a somewhat broader span of human experience. And in a reading by Dick Gilbert that's included in Singing the Living Tradition that we've heard before in our worship services, he talks about those who come to church with weary spirits. With weary spirits. When someone walks through our doors, whether they're new or they've been here for a while, it's usually not with a proclamation of, well, hello there. Everything has been going wonderfully for me. I've been looking for a community on which to bestow my good cheer and vast wealth. They might just be simply looking for people to meet, to be friends with, or they might come with weary spirits and feel a need in their soul, some longing for something richer or deeper in their lives, or some pain that they carry that they're trying to address. And so in your life, when someone comes to you longing for something richer and deeper in their lives, how do you connect with them around that? When someone comes to you with pain that they carry, that they're trying to address, how do you connect with them around that? When you are longing for something richer or deeper in your life, what do you do with that? When you carry pain that you are trying to address, what do you do with that? In Campbell's words, the parts of yourself that you thought you had to hide to survive are longing to be unhidden. The first two poems in the book of Lamentations have the narrator first describing what happened to Zion and from a more distant spectator perspective. And then Zion starts to speak for herself, and she vividly describes what's happening to her. And the narrator slowly starts to become less of a spectator and joins her in her expression of lament. And he too feels and gives expression to the pain that she carries, to the longing that she expresses. I wanted so badly for those two boys in the waiting room, for their father to feel like he was able to meet them in their sadness, to join them in their lament, and to father them through it. But I know that that is not easy. It's one thing to talk about being open and honest with the fun and enjoyable parts of life, but it can start to feel really scary when we venture into the realms of painful experience. But like anything, that is a capacity that can be developed. It doesn't need to be like just jumping out of an airplane, trying to toughen up and deal with it. In fact, that's usually counterproductive. It can be more like stretching in the morning. Feeling our tight muscles gradually ease and relax. My encouragement, my invitation, my homework over this coming week I would ask you to engage in some emotional flexibility practice. And that can look like whatever that looks like for you. But I'll offer you just an example. And this is a guided meditation that I welcome you to take part in and to see if this works for you, if you want to do some other shape or form of this. And for this guided meditation, you're welcome to close your eyes or to lower your gaze. This is also by Joanna Macy. And closing your eyes, focus attention on your breathing. Don't try to breathe any special way, slow or long. Just watch the breathing as it happens, in and out. Note the accompanying sensations at the nostrils or upper lip, in the chest or abdomen, and stay passive and alert, like a cat by a mouse hole. And as you watch the breath, note that it happens by itself, without your will, without your deciding each time to inhale or exhale. It's as though you are being breathed by life. Just as everyone in this room, in this city, in this planet now is being breathed by life, sustained in a vast living web. And I visualize your breath as a stream or ribbon of air, flowing up through your nose, down through your windpipe and into your lungs. And now from your lungs, take it through your heart. Picture it flowing through your heart and out to reconnect with a larger web of life. Let the breath stream as it passes through you and through your heart appear as one loop within that vast web, connecting you with it. Now open your awareness to the suffering that is present in the world. Drop for now all defenses and open to your knowledge of that suffering. Let it come as concretely as you can. Images of your fellow beings in pain and need, fear, isolation, in prisons, hospitals, tenements, refugee camps. No need to strain for these images. They are present to you by virtue of our interbeing. Relax and just let them surface. The vast and countless hardships of our fellow humans and of our non-human siblings as well, as they swim the seas and fly the air of this planet. Now breathe in the pain like granules on the stream of air. Up through your nose, down through your trachea, lungs, heart, and out again into the world. You are asked to do nothing for now, but let it pass through your heart. Be sure that the stream flows through and out again. Don't hang on to the pain. Surrender it for now to the healing resources of life's vast web. With Shantideva, the Buddhist saint, we can say, "Let all sorrows ripen in me." We help them ripen by passing them through our hearts, making good, rich compost out of all that grief, so that we can learn from it, enhancing our larger collective knowing. If no images or feelings arise and there is only blankness, gray and numb, breathe that through also. That numbness is a very real part of our world. And if what surfaces is not the pain of other beings so much as your own personal suffering, breathe that through too. Your own anguish is an integral part of the grief of our world. and arises with it. Should you feel an ache in the chest, a pressure in the rib cage as if the heart would break, that is all right. Your heart is not an object that can break. But if it were, they say the heart that breaks open can hold the whole universe. Your heart is that large. Trust it and keep breathing. And at your own pace, allow your eyes to open and the room to arrive back in your vision, for your vision to come back into focus. As I'd mentioned earlier, Susan Campbell wrote, "The parts of ourselves that we thought we had to hide to survive are longing to be unhidden." The web that flows through us is often a part of ourselves that longs to be unhidden. When the waters become hard like stone and the face of the deep is frozen, may we remind each other and call each other back from whatever has caught us up. May we feel the intrinsic comfort of breathing together, of singing together, of speaking together, of dancing together, so that the pain and sorrow that each of us has in our lives doesn't have to be carried by just our own proud, solitary selves, understood by just our own proud, solitary selves. May we take courage not in false hopes or distractions or numbing out to life, but in practicing not aloneness with each other. And may we continue to lean into that practice forevermore.
Thank you, Pastor. Now is the time in our service for our offering. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and friendship. We give with the faith that together we have enough. The money in the baskets goes to sustaining the mission of our community. The money in the cups goes to our Faith in Action FIA ministry and a different charity chosen by the ministry every month. This month, the money from the cups goes to, Pete talked about it last week, the Brother's Keeper, and it's in the order of service. For those not here with us today, there's an online link on the screen for both one-time and regular donations. And if I could have 4 volunteers. For your prayers, your presence, your service, and your gifts, we're truly grateful. And now please rise as you're willing and able and join in singing the closing hymn, number 1021, Lean on Me, in the teal hymnal.
Okay, our closing reading is number 698, right? Yes. Take courage, friends. The way it is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there's another truth. You are not alone.
Love will guide us.
Terrific. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words are printed on the screen, in the order of service, and in the handouts in the pew. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. And coffee hour is going to be out in the Memorial Garden today, and don't forget that if you want to talk to Pastor Tom about the service, come back in here in 15 minutes.